Hey everybody, and welcome to Coach Max Entertainment. This isn't widely known, but I love Crash Team Racing. I mean, I've only done 2 videos on it, and now a third, and mention how much I love the game in each video, so if you haven't picked up on that by now, then I'm not sure what to tell you really. And yes, I'm still playing this game. One, because I'm trying to get everything from the pit stop, which involves a lot of grinding to get coins, and even though now I could just buy the rest of the items since they added in the microtransaction system, I've put this much work in legitimately. I can't throw that away now, and money ain't cheap. The second reason I'm still playing this game is that it's just a great game. You can check out my review of the game by clicking on the card at the top right of the screen for all of the details on why I love this game. But in short, it's just good. Partly because of the wide range of characters available to play as. I feel like that's part of the appeal of Super Smash Bros. And Mario Kart, and that's no different here. But in most racing games, your character, while important, isn't really a huge deal. Mario Kart 64 wasn't so much fun because you got to race as Mario and that's it. You get to race as Mario on a wide variety of creative and imaginative tracks. And boy does CTR have some tracks. 31 specifically, and that's just the base game. There's an exclusive track on the PS4 version, and as of this recording, there are 2 tracks that have been introduced into the game through the Grand Prix mode, with at least a few more on the way. So that's a lot of tracks to take in. And for the most part, they are all really fun and imaginative. There's always been something fun about driving a vehicle in a place where you really shouldn't be allowed to drive a car, like a cow pasture. I'm not the biggest fan of Mario Kart 64. I think it has aged incredibly poorly, and I never owned it, so I don't have that crazy nostalgic attachment to it. But Moo Moo Meadows is a fantastic track. I would love to have been in the room where that idea got pitched. You know, I really wanted to have a little skit here imagining that, but I'm just one dude. We can only work with what we got right now. But even with all of the really fun and imaginative tracks in CTR, there's some that really aren't that great. Now, I don't think there are any courses that are actually bad in the game. Even these that I don't love, I don't think are awful. And today we're going to take a look at my list of the top 5 best and worst tracks in CTR Nitro Fueled. If you disagree with anything on my list, hey, that's alright. Let me know where I messed up in the comments with what you think are the worst and best tracks. One quick note to mention before we dive into the list, I'm not including any of the Grand Prix tracks in this list, or Retro Track, the PS4 exclusive. The Grand Prix tracks have only been around for a little while, so I've not really garnered enough love or hate for them to put them in the top 5 of either category. And Retro Track is just Turbo Track in a downgraded PS1 graphical style, so it's not really its own track. I thought about including it in the worst track section for that fact, but I wouldn't rank Turbo Track that low, so I just decided to leave it out of the running. So I already know I'm going to catch some flack for ranking this track so poorly, but I just don't like Electron Avenue. The main reason? It's just a long track and I get bored of it easily. It can be really fun because almost every single boost pad gives you blue fire, and the whole vibe of the track's redesign is really funky, very reminiscent of Electrodome in Mario Kart 8. But the track just seems to take forever to drive through, even going at such a fast pace. But what if you're not able to keep up that pace? It makes the course even longer. The biggest culprit of stealing speed is this turn right here. There's another one just a few literal turns earlier, but it's actually a fun jump, air brake, and turn challenge. For this turn, you have to do a very tight U-turn that I just can't get the hang of. And that's just too many places where you might accidentally bump into a wall because it's just really tight quarters to work with. I definitely don't hate this track, but it's just not my favorite. Everyone online likes picking it just because it's one of the tracks with the biggest coin payouts, but it almost never gets my vote. I almost feel sick putting an original CTR track on the bottom 4, but this track has irked myself and many others in time trial mode. Draggin Mines stinks. Ignore time trial mode though. Is it a fun course in multiplayer or a regular race? Not really. The design is kinda fun. There's minecarts and now an actual dragon guarding all of his treasure in the remake, so that's kind of awesome. But you know what I really dislike about this track? The corkscrew. This corkscrew sucks all of the fun out of this track. No matter what character class I use, I can't get this turn down. I know this is just another instance of U-turning magnificently, but I just can't do it. And in the time trial of this course, you have a very small window of beating Oxide's time trial. This was one that took me a full hour back when I was streaming myself beating the time trials. It was rough. Barren Ruins wasn't even a blip on my radar. I remember the giant spike ball, the shortcut at the very end of the track, and that's about it. But there's two specific things that earn it this low of a ranking. The first one happens every single time I race on this track. There's icy terrain soon after the starting line, and for some reason, I feel like this ice has different rules from the rest of the ice in the game. I think it's just because it's a corkscrew, although not nearly as tight as the Draggin Mines one. But the icy turn just throws a lot of my mojo off. The second reason I don't love this track is because of these little jagged bumps. Most times they're fun little boost opportunities, but every once in a while it will shoot you off in a random direction. This is especially noticeable if you are drifting right and then all of a sudden you're running into a wall on your left. It's just annoying enough to make me scream. Not too loud though, it's just a video game. But still scream. Thunderstruck is awful. This is one of the few courses that I prefer the original C&K version over the Nitro Fueled one. The yellow brick ruins style with the green sky is a pretty cool color scheme for a track. But in Nitro Fueled, the entire track just almost has the sea green filter over it. I don't love looking at it. And the track isn't that fun to race on. Sure, it has some blue fire boost pads, but much like Electron Avenue, there's a few really tough turns that make it easy to lose your speed boost. These spinning spike bars, though, are the worst part of the level. It's very difficult to duck and weave between these things and keep your speed. And when the game first released, there was a huge exploit on this track. You could skip more than half of it, so playing online basically turned into a contest of who can exploit quicker. And that just isn't fun in this game. Now, I did use this exploit to beat Oxide's time in time trial mode, but I did it just so I could be done with this track quickly. And overall, I just don't think it's a fun track. You might have been upset that I included a CTR track in the bottom 5 of this list, but even if you love Draggin Mines, you could probably agree with some of my complaints, see where I was coming from. But I have some bad news for you. My least favorite track is also from CTR. Slide Colosseum is the one track I never want to play on, and the reason is simple. It's not because of obstacles, because there aren't any. There's not any sharp corkscrew turns. There's just a lot of nothing. This track is boring. Remember how I talked about how cool it is to see a cart in a place where you normally wouldn't see it? Well, seeing one on a race course isn't that fun. And you may be thinking, what about Coco Park? That's another course that's just a plain old track. Well, you're right, but that course is really short, and it has a neat little hill shortcut, and it's just a lot of fun. Turbo Track is another course like this, but all of the turbo pads make the track for a fast-paced experience. Slide Colosseum is boring. There's no boost pads on the track. There's no obstacles to avoid other than the natural twists and turns of a course. The most exciting it gets is these tires that you can jump over. That's about it. And did I mention that this track is just boring? Because it is. I think the track has nice atmosphere, don't get me wrong. And I certainly don't think it's bad. I just don't like it. But let's throw away all those bad tracks and get down to the best of the best in the game. These are the ones you remember playing as a kid, the ones you saw in the commercials, the ones that you played over and over to get the fastest time you could and then looked at the world records online and stopped playing them over and over because your personal times were nowhere near the world record. Yeah, that was me. These are the best tracks in CTR. A common trend I talked about in my lowest ranked tracks was when you have the opportunity to move fast, but the course just isn't made for moving fast except at the highest level of play. Well, the counter to that is a course that gives you a lot of opportunities to move quickly, but the course isn't laid out in a tough way to maneuver while moving fast. And Engine Labs is one of those places. For starters, there's the giant boost tunnel about a third of the way into the level, and it's a blast to drive through. Even when I was a young kid, I loved playing this level just because of that tunnel. I had no idea of the intricate boost mechanics present throughout the rest of the level. I loved the fast tunnel because it made me boost the entire time. And the rest of the level has tight turns, but nothing too ridiculous. No sharp 180-degree turns or corkscrews. These turns are just tight enough that most players can get them, and it's a grand old time. In the original CTR, I never really cared for Cortex Castle. I didn't love or hate it, I just didn't care. But for some reason, I have fallen in love with it in the remake, and I think I've narrowed down why the change in preference. For starters, the castle doesn't feel as lifeless as it used to be. It's a castle. It's supposed to feel like a common theme is present and maybe a little scary. And the colors present really set the vibe. These spiders? I don't like these spiders. They looked fine in the first game, but I'm legitimately a little scared of these spiders. I don't like spiders. The shortcut near the end of the track was made just a little easier to take too, and I think that's great. There's a lot of shortcuts like this one that involve skill to take, and while making it easier to access them does kinda cheapen the shortcut, I think it was way too particular in the original, where it just wasn't worth it to take this shortcut without a mask or a turbo. And the castle drawbridge that gives blue fire, magnificent. Keeping blue fire through the whole castle is a tough challenge, but it's a fun challenge. Just like I mentioned with the last track, the entire castle is a place that I love visiting and will always get my vote in an online lobby. This is definitely one of the commonly agreed upon tracks. Papooses Pyramid is actually the very first track I ever played. If you're an old timer like me, you might remember these demo discs from Pizza Hut. It had a demo for CTR and Ape Escape that I played religiously. And it also had Tony Hawk and Final Fantasy VIII on it. I think I thought I was going to get in trouble with my parents if I played those games for some reason. I was very sheltered as a child. But anyways, Papooses Pyramid, Blizzard Bluff, and Dingo Canyon were the tracks included in the demo for when you chose 1, 2, or 4 players respectively. And as a child with a very young sister, and even though my parents played every once in a while, I raced around the pyramid many times. And it looks so beautiful now. The idea of racing around a pyramid in the middle of a jungle is an amazingly creative idea. The tight corners of ascending the pyramid are one of those things that when you master it, you feel like a boss, and it's not overly difficult. And including the plants from Crash 1 was a great callback. And the shortcuts are so satisfying to use. This one was always a pain in the original, but they made it easier in this version. Again, I don't think it cheapens the shortcut that it's easier. It's still fun to take, and really fun online to leave traps for people since most go through this route. And the shortcut to the side lets you drive right over the beginning of the track and get more Wumpa fruit. But the granddaddy shortcut of the level is completely skipping the top of the hill and just flying down with gravity being your only restriction. This is the most satisfying shortcut in the game in my opinion, and it's part of what makes this track so fun. So, I had 2 original CTR tracks in my bottom 5, and even had one of them as my worst. Imagine how upset some people would get if I had a C and K track as my second favorite. Well, Clockwork Wumpa was neat in Crash Nitro Kart, but for some reason I have fallen in love with this track this time around. It's just like Cortex Castle, but just a little bit shorter. And I like that it's not a really long level. The twists and turns are so exhilarating. Hopping over the gears to take a shortcut is such a creative idea. And the blue fire jump, which is admittedly just like Cortex Castle's, rocks. Keeping this blue fire through the entire clock tower is a great challenge. I honestly believe this is the best track to practice keeping that fire while hopping and drifting. It's tough, but not overly challenging. And here's another shortcut that was modified a little bit. Although I don't think it's too different from the original in C and K. If you don't hit this ramp at the right angle, you can still whiff and miss the shortcut. The trapdoor can be really fun to use online too. You just gotta make sure you don't get caught in it. I just really like this course. Do I really need to say more to justify it? Most of my favorite courses have boost pads that make you zoom faster than a Bandicoot could ever dream. So my favorite course has to be something like Hot Air Skyway, right? Well, I do enjoy that course, but no. That's not the course I enjoy more than any other. That course is none other than Ruse Tubes. Kinda shocking, huh? Let's break it down. This course is the second one you'll play in adventure mode. It's a great contrast to Crash Cove, a bright and sunny course on the beach, followed by a somewhat eerie underwater adventure. As a kid, I knew there were no limits to what the courses would be after this though, whether that be in space or in the sky, it was all possible. And the course itself is just great. To compare it with the first level again, Crash Cove is kinda flat, but Ruse Tubes goes up and down and up and down. That change in terrain is crazy. You gain so much speed when you go downhill. It's nuts. And in the original CTR, maybe in the remake, I'm honestly not sure, you gained a significant amount of speed when you were driving downhill. This course is perfect for that. The boost pads that are here are nice and just keep that momentum going. And the track is honestly over before you know it. It's a quick and wild ride, and it's my favorite track. This was actually the first track that I got a platinum relic on accident in CTR, and then realized that there were so many more things in the game than it was telling me, and it just added to my love of this fantastic game. This level slaps. It's sick. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video though, there aren't any tracks in CTR that I believe are bad. There's just so much to love and hate about certain tracks in the game. But having this many tracks in the game, even if a few of them aren't my favorites, there's so many others that I love that it doesn't matter if the tracks aren't the best. So now that I've had a bunch of videos on Crash Team Racing, will I finally do other videos? I mean, I could, but then I'd have to stop playing this game. And maybe I actually need to do that. Ah well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Driving over it, obviously. Thank you so much for checking out the channel today. We just crossed over the 100 subscriber threshold, and that just blows my mind. Seriously, 100 of you like to listen to my voice. How bored are you? In all honesty though, I'm so very appreciative of everyone that has subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed, join the team. Until next time, see you later.